Hello everyone, welcome to our next video on exploiting the smart contract latency vulnerability using Remix and Truffle. Well, let me introduce myself. I am Neha. Today we will delve into the mechanics of this vulnerability and demonstrate how it can be exploited step by step. Well, here first question raised is what type of vulnerability it is. Well, it occurs when a contract makes an external call to another contract. Well, it occurs when a contract makes external call to another contract before completing its own state. Okay, to another contract before completing its own stage, allowing unexpected retrains call. So the next question raised here is how does retency attack work? Well, let's see with an example. So here we have an example where we have two contracts, contract A and contract B. An attacker find a smart contract that allows user to deposit fund and withdraw them at a later time. The attacker creates a miscellaneous contract B that repeatedly calls the deposit function. So here bit of the vulnerable contract A. Depositing fund into the attacker's own account. The attacker then calls the withdraw function of the vulnerable contract, withdrawing the deposited fund. Because the deposit function of the vulnerable contract is not properly protect against it. So the attacker is able to repeatedly call the deposit function before calling the withdraw function. So the attacker continues to repeat the attack until they have stolen as many as funds from the contract. The attacker continues to repeat the attack until they have stolen as many as funds as they desire. So we will see it with a code. Let me introduce you to Remix. You can just go to Google and type Remix IDE. Type Remix IDE and search. Well, it is an example of simple smart contract that is vulnerable to retency, as you can see. Well, in this contract, we have deposit function that allows user to deposit fund into their account, and we have withdraw function that allow user to withdraw their deposit funds. However, the contract does not properly check for retency. You can see they are not checking for retency here. So an attacker could create a malicious contract that repeatedly call the deposit function before calling the withdraw function. So to prevent this, what we did is we add the retency lock. Okay. So retency lock is a variable that is added to the contract. The deposit function now check this deposit function will now check the retency lock is there or not. That if the variable is true, if the you can see we have made it true. If this variable is true, the deposit will not occur and the attacker will not be able to steal the fund. The retency lock variable is set to true before the deposit and set back to the false after. You can see we have set it back to the false. We can set it back to the false after. This way the contract can only be called once at a time. It okay. So let's move to the next question. We have several types of reentrancy attack. Our first attack is foreturning attack. Our first attack is foreturning attack. It is an attack where attacker monitors the blockchain for transaction that will call a vulnerable contract and then quickly submit a transaction that call the same contract before the original transaction is proceed. And now we have second, that is timestamp dependency. Well, it is an attack where an attacker manipulates the timestamp to block the cause of vulnerable contract to execute in a way that is favorable to attacker. So the third one is recursive call attack. So it is an attack where an attacker call a vulnerable contract multiple times in a row. You can see multiple times in a row, causing the contract to execute an intended function or execute the same function multiple times. Now we have cross function call attack. Well, the cross function call attack is basically where an attacker call multiple function in a vulnerable contract in a specific order to cause unintended behavior. Well, the next question raised is how to protect smart contract against a reentrancy attack. We can protect our smart contract against our reentrancy by using a mutex or mutual lock. Well, it is a lock used to prevent multiple calls to the same function from occurring at the same time. When a function is called, the mutex lock is set and other call to the same function will be blocked until the call is released. Well, and the second method is we can use a guard condition, where a guard condition is a flag that is set before external function call and checked after. If the flag is set, the contract will not execute the external call and prevent reentrancy. Now we can also use check call stack depth. And checking the call stack depth is a way to ensure that the contract is not being called recursively. If the call stack depth exceed a certain threshold, the contract will stop executing.
Hello everyone. So we are on our next topic, that is overflow and underflow attack on smart contracts. I am Neha and we are going to start our next topic. So let's see what is an overflow and underflow attack. So an overflow and underflow attack, when an operation is performed that requires a fixed size variable to store the result of the operation. So the next question raised is, what is integer overflow? So we have two types of integer overflow, that is unsigned integers and signed integers. Well, unsigned integers are the positive numbers ranging from 0 to 2256 minus 1, whereas the signed integers are that include both positive and negative numbers ranging from minus 2255 to 2255 minus 1. So let's see an example of overflow situation and underflow situation. Well, in overflow situation, consider an unsigned 8-bit integer variable unit 8a. This variable has a range from 0 to 255. Well, we have unit a equals to 255. We have written it here and then a plus plus. Well, this result in an overflow error as the variable a can take values in the interval 0 to 255. Then incrementing the value of a by 1 would result in an overflow situation. And here in underflow situation, well, considered an unsigned 8-bit integer variable uint a8a. This variable has a range from 0 to 255. We have seen the example here. Well, we have write uint 8a equals to 0. A decrement. This result is an underflow error as the variable a can take a value in the range of 0 to 255 and decrementing the value by 1 would be result in code collapse. Probably we have some process and challenges of detecting integer overflow in Ethereum. Well, first is no indication. In this program language, there is an indication of integer overflow, but this is not the case with EVM. Well, in arithmetic operation, we have addition or subtraction of two numbers can also result in integer overflow, underflow. Third one we have is false positive. In some cases, it is possible to identify what operation has caused integer overflow and whether the operand are signed or unsigned. And fourth, no type of byte code level. This type of signed and unsigned integer are declared in high level programming language only, but not on the byte level code. Well, let's see type of error attack of overflow. Well, here is the example of overflow error attack on smart contract. Well, in this example, the malicious user is able to send a large number of ether to the contract that exceed the maximum value of a unit. If the value of amount variable reaches the maximum value of unit 2 की power 256, then it is going to circle back and make it 0, which can be very problematic to handle. This can lead to an unexpected result such as total balance becoming negative and can enable the attacker to steal funds from the contract. So we have some solution for this. Here we have solution. Here the overflow condition is checked by checking if the sum of balance in the recipient account and the amount to be transferred is greater than or equal to balance in the recipient account or not. Here we check whether the transfer is greater or equal. So this ensures that even if the user is allowed to increment the value by 1 at a time, even then there is no feasible way to reach this limit. To prevent this type of attack, developers should make sure to use safe math libraries or appropriate type of provide overflow decision. Next, let's see underflow error attack on smart contract. Well, this error attack operates in the exact position of the overflow error. Instead of exceeding the maximum value, an overflow error occurs when you go below the minimum amount. So we have example. So in this example demonstrate that the function does not check for integer overflow and thus allow a large number of token to be withdrawn. Well, there is a no check integer here. We can see there is no check integer here. So it can be so impactful. Like if a program lack the features that check for underflow or overflow, an attacker can get more tokens than they know. So they can also get a maxed out balance, which is essentially stealing. These errors can cause the whole system to break because the number of tokens being maxed out is not the same as the token in the system. So to avoid falling victim to all underflow attack, the best practice is to check if the updated integers stay within the byte range. Well, beauty chain contract is one example where the attacker used the behavior of integer overflow to overcome some security checks and stole a huge amount of BEC token. So like we also heard about POWHC, which is proof of weak hand coin. Well, it is a Ponzi scheme on Ethereum written in Solidity by 4chain Group. The author of the smart contract had not observed the underflow or overflow condition and thus liberated 866 ethers from the contract. So that's it for today, guys. Let's meet on the next video.
Hello and welcome to this video on smart contract self-destruct vulnerabilities. In this video, we will explore how attackers can exploit the self-destruct function in Solidity to steal ether from a contract. Well, first have a look at an example of vulnerable contract. We have example here. In this example, this contract has a roll dice. You can see we have a roll dice here, roll dice function,
that allow user to send one either and a roll dice. If the dice land on 5, you can see we have written a 5 here. If the dice land on 5, the contract send to either back to the users. However, there is a vulnerability in this contract. The randomness function generates a pseudo random number. You can see here we have random number. The randomness function generates a pseudo-random number based on sender's address. We have sender address here. Okay, the transaction origin, the current block's timestamp, the gas price and the block hash of the previous block. An attacker can exploit this vulnerability by creating a contract that calls the roll dice function and predict the outcome of the dice roll. Well, let's take an example of the exploit contract. Well, here is the example of exploit contract. So in this code, the attacker create an instance of the exploit contract and send it to either. The exploit contract then call the bet safely. You can see here we have written bet safely. Wait. Here is bet safely function of the vulnerable contract. Passing itself as the game parameter, the bet safely function called the randomness function. Here is the randomness function of the exploit contract which generates the same pseudo-random number as the vulnerable contract. If the number is 5, the exploit contract sends one either to the vulnerable contract, which then sends two either back to the exploit contracts. The attacker can repeat this process until the vulnerable contract runs out of either. The self-destruct function in Solidity allows the attacker to send the remaining either in the contract to any address. In this case, the attacker can use self-destruct to send the remaining either to their own address. Well, to prevent this vulnerability, contract developers should avoid using the self-destruct function. So we should avoid using it and instead use a more secure method, that is transferring either. Okay, for transferring either we should use more secure method. One way to do this is use the transfer function, which has built-in checks to prevent overflow and underflow. Another way to prevent this vulnerability is to use a more secure random number generator. The KCAC256 function, this KCAC256 function used in this example is not truly random and can be predicted by the attacker. Instead, contract developers should use a more secure random number generator, such as we have block hash function, which generate random number based on hash of the current block. Well, in conclusion, the self-destruct function in Solidity can be exploited by attackers to steal either from a contract. To prevent this vulnerability, contract developers should avoid using self-destruct and use a more secure method as we have covered previously. So thank you for watching this video. Let's meet on the next topic. Hello and welcome to this video on cross-site scripting, or we can say XSS. Well, in this video we will see how to exploit it using Pursuit or OWASP Zap. Well, first, sorry, we won't be able to show live pen test because of personal policy right now, but surely try to clear out all details in this video. Well, in this video we will explore how attackers can exploit XSS vulnerability in DApp interfaces to steal user data or take control of their account. Well, first take a look. We have example here of vulnerable. We have an HTML code here. In this example, the DApp interface display a welcome message. We have welcome message here that include the user's input. Okay, so however, there are vulnerability in this code. If the user input contains malicious JavaScript code, the code will execute it in the user's browser. Well, an attacker can exploit this vulnerability by injecting a script that steals the user's cookies or take control of their account. So we will see our next example. So here is the example of XXS attack. So we have example here, XSS attack. Well, in this code, the attacker inject a script that display an alert message. So we have alert message here. You can see the attacker inject a script that display an alert message. However, they could just as easily inject a script that steal the user cookie or take control of their. To test XSS vulnerability, we can use tool like Burpsuit or OWASP Zap. So we have some points you can follow. So here we have steps to follow to use the Burpsuit. Well, first step is open Burpsuit and intercept a request to the app interface, and then modify the request to include malicious JavaScript code in a user input field. We will see the JavaScript code. Well, the third step is send the modified request to the app interface. Check the response for any signs of the malicious JavaScript code. Well, this one is the code I was talking about. So in this example, the attacker include a script tag in the name parameter of the request. If the app interface is vulnerable to XSS, the script will be executed in the user's browser. Well, to prevent XSS vulnerability in app interface, contract developers should sanitize user input and encode output. Well, sanitizing user input involves removing any character that could be used to inject malicious code. Encoding output involves converting special characters to their HTML entities. Well, let's see another example. Here is an example of how to sanitize user input and encode output in the previous example. Well, we have the code here. In this example, the encode URI component, this one encode URI component function encodes any special character in the user input, and the sanitize function remove any character. This one sanitize function removes any character that could be used to inject malicious code. Well, in conclusion, XSS vulnerability in app interface can be exploited by attackers to steal user data or take control of their account. Well, thanks for watching this video. Let's meet on the next topic. Thank you. Hello everyone, and today we are going to talk about SQL injection in decentralized databases and how to exploit it using SQL map. Well, SQL injection is a code injection technique that the attacker can use to manipulate or extract data from the database. It is one of the most web application vulnerability. It is one of the most common vulnerability. Well, it can have serious consequences if left unchecked. Decentralization database, also known as blockchain databases, are a type of databases that is distributed across a network of nodes. Well, across a network of nodes, they are often used in decentralized application to store and manage data. Well, SQL Map is an open source pen testing tool that automates the process of detecting and exploiting SQL injections. Well, let's see an example. This is the command we perform SQL injection using SQL Map. Well, this command specifies the target URL and injection point using the -u option. the custom data to send using the data option, the blind SQL injection technique using this technique option, and the string and not string. The string and not string option to specify the string to look for in the server's response. If a decentralized database has a security measure in place that block SQL injection attack, you can try to bypass them using various techniques. For example, you can use the tamper script evasion technique to modify the SQL injection payload in a way that bypasses the WAF signature detection. To use the tamper to hash.py script to evade a WAF during a SQL scan, you would use the following command. See, you can use this following command. Well, bypassing database firewall. In this, if a database has a firewall in place that blocks certain SQL command or query, you can try to bypass the firewall by using a technique that is called time-based blind SQL injection. That is called time-based SQL injection. Time-based blind SQL injection. Well, this involves sending SQL injection payloads that cause the database to delay or sleep for a certain amount of time. Well, to use time-based blind SQL injection during a SQL map scan, you would use a command SQL map target URL and the data ID and sleep. Well, there are several defense mechanisms and countermeasures that can be used to mitigate SQL injections attack on decentralized databases. For example, you can use input fillers to block certain characters or keywords in input parameters, or you can use web application firewalls, that is called WAF, to block certain SQL command or query. Hello everyone, and today we are going to talk about authentication bypass in Web3 wallet and how to exploit it using MetaMask or Wallet Connect. Well, authentication bypass in Web3 wallets occurs when an attacker is able to bypass the authentication mechanism used by the wallet, allowing them to gain unauthorized access to the user's account. This can be done using various techniques, including exploiting vulnerabilities in the wallet codes or social engineering the user into revealing the private keys or seed phrases. Well, one way to exploit authentication in Web3 wallet is by using MetaMask or Wallet Connect. These are third-party services that allow users to connect their wallets to decentralized application the app without having to directly input their private keys or seed phrases. Well, however, if the DApp is compromised, an attacker can potentially use MetaMask or Wallet Connect to bypass the wallet's authentication mechanism and gain unauthorized access to the user account. Well, however, let's see an example of how an attacker might exploit authentication in Web3 wallet using MetaMask or Wallet Connect. Well, it is important to note that using this code for malicious purpose is illegal and unethical. So let's begin with our example. This code creates a contract called exploit that takes and addresses as a contractor argument. This attack function called the self-destruct function. You can see we have here is self-destruct function on the target contract and with the address of the exploit contract as the argument. If successful, the target contract will be destroyed and its other balance will be transferred to the exploit contract. Let's see another example of code that could be used to exploit authentication bypass in Web3 using MetaMask or MetaWallet. So here is an example of code that could be used to exploit authentication bypass in a Web3 wallet. In previous we have seen the example of how attacker might exploit authentication in a Web3 wallet using MetaMask and Wallet Connect. Well, in this code, as you can see, the Wallet Connect Web3 library to connect to the Web3 wallet using Wallet Connect. See, this code uses library to connect W3 wallet using Wallet Connect. It then create a contract object for the target contract and call a function on it using the sum function placeholder. Well, this transaction data is then constructed and sent using the web3.eth.send transaction method. Again, it's an important note that using this code for malicious purpose is illegal and unethical. This example are only for educational purpose. Let's see what we can do for prevent authentication bypass in Web3 wallet. It's important to follow best practices for securing your wallet, like never sharing your private keys or seed phrase with anyone, or only connecting your wallet to trusted dApps, or being cautious of phishing attempts and other social attacks. Well, additionally, wallet developer can take steps to secure their code and prevent authentication bypass, like validating user input to prevent injection attack, or using secure communication protocols to transmit sensitive data, or regularly auditing their code for vulnerability. Well, by following these best practices, users and developers can help prevent authentication bypass. Now, that's it for today. Thank you guys. Hello everyone, and today we are going to talk about front-end injection attack in dApp and how to exploit them using JavaScript injection tool. Well, first, what is front-end injection attack? Well, it is a type of attack. Well, there is a type of security vulnerability that can occur in web application, including decentralization application. These attacks happen when an attacker is able to inject malicious JavaScript code into a web page or application. This can lead to unauthorized access, data theft, or other malicious activities. Well, one way to exploit front-end injection attack is by using JavaScript injection tool. These tools allow attackers to inject malicious code into a web page or applications, allowing them to steal user data or manipulate them. Let's take an example. In this example, the attacker injects a script tag into the web page that loads a malicious JavaScript file from the attacker servers. The malicious JavaScript file can then steal user data or manipulate the application. There are several JavaScript injection tools available, including Browser Exploitation Framework. Well, basically, Browser Exploitation Framework is a pen testing tool that focuses on web browser. Well, it also allows attackers to inject malicious JavaScript code into a web page and control the victim's browser. Well, next is XSS Hunter. Well, it is a tool that helps penetration tester find and exploit cross-site scripting vulnerability. And another one is JSky, where it is a JavaScript exploitation framework that allows attackers to inject malicious JavaScript code into a web page and perform various actions such as stealing cookies or manipulating the DOM. For making it easy, let me write down it for you. So first one what we have, B, E, E and F. Basically it is a browser exploitation framework. And the second one we have is XSS Hunter, and we can also call it cross site scripting is scripting. And third one we have is J Sky, and what we can call it Java script exploitation. So we have these three. These three are they are not the enough, but these three are the some injection tools that is available. Well, to prevent front-end injection attack, it is important to follow best practices for securing your web application. Well, let me tell you some ways to protect your application. First is sanitize your input. Well, always sanitize user input to prevent attackers from injecting malicious code. And second is a CSP, that is use content security policy. Well, it implement a content security policy to restrict the type of content that can be loaded on your web page. Well, third one is use HTTPS. Well, using HTTPS to encrypt data in transit and prevent attackers from intercepting users' data. And use a web application firewall, that is web, you all know it, implement it on web application firewall to detect and block malicious traffic. Well, that's it for today's, guys. Thank you so much.
So in this lecture, we are going to see how does DOS was exploited in Geth. So before seeing the exploitation, let's see what is Geth. Okay, what is Geth? So it's one of the most popular software implementation of the Ethereum protocol. It serves as a client for interacting with Ethereum blockchain network, and it is developed in Go language. Okay, so it is software a software implementation of Ethereum protocol, and it serves as a client for interacting with the Ethereum blockchain network. And most importantly, it is developed in Go language. Okay, now let's come to the exploitation part. So this exploit was found at September 2021, where a peer connected on the Snap1 protocol could cause a vulnerable node to crash with a panic. Okay, so what the exploit was? So it's found in September 2021, and it can cause a peer which is connected with Snap/1 protocol. Okay, it's a kind of protocol. So a peer connected to this protocol could cause a vulnerable node to crash with a panic. Okay, cause a vulnerable node to crash. Okay, so let's see how it was exploited. So here I have already uh, have the this code. Okay, so here this is a snippet of a code. This is the snippet of a code. Okay, which is taken from Get software, which is written in Go language. So let's understand what this code means. So this try get node function, this function is used to retrieve a node, and it is taking 4 parameter: this original node, path, byte, position, int. Okay, pos means position. Okay, so it is used to retrieve a node. Okay, so now uh, it is returning this value: item, new node, resolved, and error. Okay, so now this variable pos will check if it reached the requested path. Okay, requested path means if the requested node has been found. So in simply just understand this, that it is used to it is used to find that if the requested node has been found or not. Okay, if yes, then the code inside this block will get execute. Okay, so what now let's see what this code is doing. Okay, so if the origin node is a type of hash node, then assign origin node with a hash. Okay, otherwise it calls the cache method on the origin node to fetch the node's hash from this. You don't need to understand this whole code in deep. Just try to get a rough idea. Okay, I'm explaining you this again. This try get node is a function which is taking this 4 parameter and returning this 4 values. Okay, now this this POS is checking if the requested node has been found. If yes, then this code will get execute. And what this code is doing, it is checking that if origin node is a type of hash node. Okay, if it is yes, then assign the node a hash value, assign the origin node to the hash. Otherwise it calls the cache method on the origin node. This line, it calls the cache method to the origin node. Okay, on the origin node to fetch the node's hash from the disk. Okay, now so how does an attacker exploit this code? So the attacker will pass this origin node parameter as nil. Okay, as nil. Okay, so nil means it have a zero value, or we can say absence of value. Okay, simply understand it is absence of value. Okay, so this is indicating that the request node is not found. Okay, so this nil, what it is indicating, that the request node is not found. Okay, so in this case the code should raise an error. Okay, it should raise an error, but instead it leads to panic when attempting to access the properties of nil node, which ultimately leads to DOS. Okay, so what happened here? The attacker passed origin node as nil. Nil means no origin node were found, no requested node was found, and in this case, if nil is there, it should raise an error, but instead it does not raise an error, and it just created a panic in the node. Okay, same thing happened in this code also. In this code, assumes that the snap dot just assume this code, what it is doing, it assumes that the snap dot account will always return a non-nil response. Non-nil response means it will return some values. Okay, But in this case, now this snap account returns nil nil, which indicate that the request account not found without raising any error. Okay, so in this code also no error is raised and it is returning nil nil. Okay, so this unexpected behavior now leads to further errors in the code execution flow. Okay, so this both code snippet was vulnerable to DOS attack. So how to prevent this attack? We can include this code in the program. It will check that if there is an error in the program. Okay, so this if there is an error in the program or account is double equals to nil. Okay, so then this break statement will get executed. Okay, what it is doing, if there is a error in the code, and if there is an nil in the code, then this break statement is executed. So if either of the condition is true, then this break will get executed. Okay, and in this, if this origin node is equal to the nil, it should return nil nil 0 nil. So this is how DOS attack can be prevented in this code. So in this lecture, we are going to see how to exploit gas price vulnerability with the help of gas guzzler. Okay, so first of all, let's see what is a gas guzzler. So it's a software or a script that exploit vulnerability related to gas pricing. Okay, we can't say there is a specific tool or software. Rather, it's a concept or strategy to exploit the vulnerability. Okay, it can include setting abnormally high or low gas price to manipulate the Ethereum network. Okay, so what's a gas guzzler? It's a software or a script, or rather you can say it's a concept or strategy to exploit which vulnerability? Gas price vulnerability. Okay, so what are these vulnerabilities we are talking? Okay, so first one is front running attack. So I have already explained you in the previous lecture what is front running attack. So in this, attacker tries to prioritize his own transaction before the victim to gain an unfair advantage. Okay, so we have this script which is made using the concept of gas guzzler. Wait, so this is a script, okay, which is made up with the concept of gas guzzler. So as you can see, okay, so as you can see, the gas price of victim is this. Okay, this is the gas price of the victim. So the attacker increases the gas price in his transaction. Okay, this whole block is of victim transaction, and this block is of attacker transaction. Okay, so this is the gas price of victim. So what attacker did is he increases the gas price in his transaction, and you can see the value and gas limit is same, only the gas price is different. So he increases the gas price in this to prioritize his own transaction over this victim transaction. Okay, so the attacker increases the gas price in his transaction, and then the hash of both the transaction is printed to track the process. Okay, so, to track the transaction. Okay, so here as you can see, this hash of the attacker transaction is printed, and here hash of the victim is printed. So here, as you all know what is happening, I guess you got an idea. This attacker is trying to prioritize his own transaction over victim's transaction. Okay. So the next vulnerability we are seeing is miner manipulation. So here attacker influences miners by offering them high gas price. Okay. So note that front running attack and miner manipulations are not same. Okay. You must be thinking that uh, just wait a second. Yes. So you must be thinking that here also we are trying to prioritize uh, the attacker's transaction over victim's transaction by increasing the gas price, and in mining manipulation also we are doing the same. Okay, the method is same, but the idea behind doing this is different. Okay, so in front running attack, attacker use the time gap between the transaction submissive and its confirmation. Okay, so as I have already explained you in the previous lecture, that in the front running attack, what the attacker did is, first of all, he keep tracks on all the transaction in a meme pool. Okay, and when he sees some transaction, so like suppose I have given an example na ki, if a victim tries to, wait, let me draw. Okay, so like victim tries to uh, buy some tokens, let's suppose 1 ether is equals to 100 token. Okay, so if attacker saw this transaction, so it's not what we can say, it's not confirmed yet. Okay, it's not added into the blockchain. It this transaction, what what victim is doing, this transaction is still in the meme pool. Okay, so what attacker did is he created another transaction and increased the gas price, and his transaction will be prioritized over this victim transaction. So what will happen, this value of this will increase, and the next time victim has to pay more value, more money for this transaction. Okay, for this transaction which he is paying now. Okay, so means next time victim will pay more money for this transaction. So this is the uh, idea behind this front running attack. Okay, but in mining attack it's not the same. In miner attack, an attacker can prioritize certain transaction or even delay some specific transaction. Okay, so I hope you got the idea. Okay, in front running attack, the attacker used the time gap between a transaction submissive and its confirmation, and in miner attack, attacker can prioritize certain transaction or even delay specific transaction. Okay, so here's the script for miner manipulation. Okay, this is the script for miner manipulation. So here attacker, this is the attacker transaction. Attacker is paying an extremely high price to manipulate the miners, and when miners see this gas price, they will surely prioritize attackers transaction over any other transaction. Okay, so the uh, next attack is DOS attack. So here in DOS attack, attacker sends a huge volume of transaction of higher gas rate. This way, gas guzzler block valid transaction, resulting in a DOS attack. Okay. So let me show you the script. So here's the script. What it is, what's happening here is, see, attacker. This is the attacker's transaction, and he paid extremely high price, and here he started a loop which will result in this DOS attack. Okay, same transaction will repeat, and this will exploit the vulnerability in the blockchain. Okay, I hope you got the idea. So DOS transaction with the hash, then suppose first transaction will happen, then hash will be printed. Second transaction, hash will be printed. Third transaction, hash will be printed. So like this, thousand loop will be repeating 1,000 times. Okay, so this is the whole idea behind the this vulnerability, gas price vulnerability. Okay, this lecture we are going to see a time based attack on smart contracts. Time based attack. Okay, so smart contracts often use block timestamps for determine when certain conditions should be met or action should be taken. So attacker may try to manipulate this timestamp by controlling the timing of their transaction or by exploiting the vulnerability in the contract code. Okay, I know you didn't understand anything, so let me give an example. So here I am using my Visual Studio Code. So it's opening, and here I am opening Ganache. So on in the next lecture, not next, in the upcoming lecture, we are going to talk about what is Ganache, VS Code, and how to set up all of these things. Okay, so I will give you insight about Ganache and everything in the upcoming lecture. Okay, so here it's starting, and let me give you just a introduction of this. So here you can see the current block number, gas price, gas limit, network ID, and all of this thing. Okay, here we can see transaction, the block numbers, the contracts and logs, etc. Okay, so let's try to connect our Ganache with our smart contracts. Okay, so how to connect it? Just go to this settings, add project, then this truffleconfig.js, and save and restart. So we get many test accounts with this much balance, 100 ether, 100 ether. Okay, and we have this block number, gas price, gas limit, etc. Okay, so let's see what I was talking about. Okay, so let's say this is our smart contract. So first of all, let me compile all of these contracts. Truffle console, and then compile. So here are all the smart contracts will be compiled. Okay, then no, truffle migrate to deploy our smart contracts. Okay, you can see here our smart contracts will be deployed. I don't know why it's taking so much of time. Okay, just ignore this error. So our contract is deployed. Okay, now what to do? This is our time lock for time lock vault dot sol, and in this, how to execute this means how to interact with this contract. We need this JS file. So I have already created this JS file, deposit.js and withdraw.js. Okay, so what's happening in this code is this code allows users to lock their fund for a specific period of time. User deposit the fund using this deposit.js, and okay, so let's see how the user will deposit. So truffle execute test, because my this deposit directory deposit file is inside this test directory, test, and then deposit dot js, and then network development. So as you can see, deposit transaction successful, and here you can see this, it's 99 ether ना, जस्ट लाइक जैसे पहले इस यहाँ 100 इथर था, अब 99 हो चुका है इथर. सो दिस इज deposit transaction is successful. Now let's see what if we try to deploy this. Oh, sorry, deploy, not withdraw the fund which we have deposited. Okay, so let's use the same command, but this time we will use withdraw.js. Okay. Oh, sorry, it's wrong. Yes. Again wrong. Withdraw.js. Yeah. Okay. So as you can see, it didn't short anything. Why? Because in this contract, the contract is locked for 2 minutes. So user won't be able to withdraw the fund before those 2 minutes. Okay. So let's wait for 2 minutes, and let me show you how this is vulnerable. Means user can just so let's say this is our this vault, what the name was of the file, timelock vault. Okay, let's say this is timelock vault .sol, so that attacker can override this time vault log.sol and create a contract, vulnerable contract, like to just remove those time limit, or can manipulate those time limit. Okay, so this is what the time based attack is. Okay, so here attacker can deposit the fund but immediately calls the withdraw function even though the lock period has not passed. So by manipulating this, attacker successfully bypassed this lock feature. Okay, so what attacker did was manipulate the smart contract and bypass the lock period. Okay, so he successfully bypassed the lock period by manipulating this smart contract. Okay, and let me just see if that 2 minutes are complete. Okay, it's completed, and let's see it's 100 ether na. So that's how the normal function was, that without completing this 2 minutes, that the user won't be able to withdraw the fund, but attacker can bypass this by writing the vulnerable smart contract. Okay, so in this lecture we are going to see what is replay attack on cross transaction. So let's understand what is replay attack first. Okay, replay attack. So it is a form of network attack in which a valid data transmission is intercepted and then replayed to produce unintended effects. So what does it mean is, suppose this is A. Okay, again this is our A. and A is transferring some amount, let's say 1 ether to B. Okay, to a person B. So it's B, A, and B, and it is transferring 1 ether to 1 ether to B. Okay, so but attacker intercept this transaction. Attacker intercept this transaction, and he replayed this transaction on another blockchain. Okay, so what does attacker did? So he intercepted this transaction, okay, and then this transaction he replayed it on another blockchain network. Okay, so what will happen here is this a na this a this a person will lose two ether. Okay, originally he was sending 1 ether, but due to this attacker intercept this transaction and played it on another blockchain network. So what happened here is this a loses its 2 ether. Okay, one from 1 ether for this transaction, and 1 ether for that transaction which attacker replayed. Okay, so I hope you understood this replay attack. So let's see what is replay attack on cross chain transaction. So replaying a transaction from one chain to another is simply a replay attack on cross chain transaction. Means the transaction of this chain. Let me draw this. Okay, suppose this is 2 chain. So the transaction of this chain, the transaction of this chain is replayed on this chain. Okay, so this is cross, just give me a second, this is cross chain transaction. Okay, now let's see the practical example of a replay attack. I have already uh, connected my Ganache with this VS Code. Okay, so this is our here I have a smart contract vulnerable to replay attack. Okay, so this line, okay, this line is used to track the balance, and here this line is used to track the nouns, which is a unique number that increases with each transaction. So here this function, we are using this deposit function to deposit the fund, and this withdraw function to withdraw the funds. Okay, so and then this one, it is sending the it is transfer the fund to the sender. Okay, so this is our smart contract. I am explaining it again. This line is used to track the balance and nouns. This deposit function is used to deposit the amount. Amount means fund, and this withdraw function is used to withdraw the fund, and it is used to transfer the fund to the sender. Okay, so to interact with this vulnerable contract, we have this script. Okay, first of all, let me clear this. Okay, so we have this script attack.js, and so what will happen here is user will send 1 ether to the contract. Okay, first of all I am drawing it before demonstrating the example practical attack. Let's first understand what is happening here. So suppose this is our user. Okay, this is our contract, and this is another user. Okay, so what is happening is this user send 1 ether to contract. Okay, now this contract will have 1 ether, Okay, this user send 1 ether to contract. Now this contract, suppose this, first of all, this contract has 0 ether. Okay, now this user send 1 ether now, so overall balance of this contract will be 1 ether. Okay, now another user, wait, now this user, okay, this user is withdrawing the fund from this contract. Okay, so what will happen, this user will withdraw 0.5 ether. Okay, 0.5 ether from this contract, but here the catch is it is vulnerable to replay attack. So here attacker created this malicious JS file. Now attacker created this malicious JS file which will consume, or which will consume all the amount of this contract, which means contract should only withdraw 0.5 ether, but here this vulnerable script will force this contract to withdraw 1 ether. Okay, I am explaining it again. This user will transfer this fund to contract which is 1 ether. Initially the balance was 0 ether, but when this user send the fund to the contract, it will have 1 ether. Okay, another user is trying to withdraw 0.5 ether from this contract, so the remaining balance should be 0.5. Okay, here it should be 0.5, but due to this vulnerable smart contract, the attacker is this is an attacker. Okay, so what attacker is doing, he will force the contract to withdraw the all the balance in this contract, which is 1 ether. Okay, so I am showing it here. So first of all, let's open a Truffle console. I don't know why it's taking so much time. Okay, now let's compile it. Okay, and now we need to uh, migrate it to deploy. So here all the contract will deploy. Okay, it's deployed. Now let's execute our script. I told you the command in the last video. The command is truffle, and here my script is in test directory. So execute test. My script name is attack.js, and then network development. See, this error is due to insufficient balance and contract balance. Okay, so what happened here is, first of all, let's see the here you can see this address na account, let's say account 0, this is account 0. So account 0 send 1 ether to our contract, and this address B was trying to withdraw the 0.5 ether from the contract, but due to this vulnerable script, it withdraw all the amount which was present in the contract, and the amount was 1 ether. So you can see the originally the balance here should be 100.05 something. Okay, 100.05, but you can see contract balance was 1 ether. So so this attacker, here it is B, so this attacker withdraw all the funds from this contract. Okay, Now this error showed na, it is because the all the contract balance has insufficient balance, contract balance. Okay, so this is why this error showed here. So I can explain. You can see here we have this contract. See this, we are sending 1 ether to our contract from account 0. You can see the 1 ether is transferred to contract. Okay, and then account 1, which was this account 1 here, he is trying to withdraw 0.5 ether, but because attacker 1 is a attacker, because sorry, account B is an attacker, what he did here is he started the loop and then withdraw all the amount from the contract. Okay, so here you can see withdraw 1 successful, which was 0.5, then withdrawal 2 was successful, which was 0.5, and together it created 1 ether na. So our contract had only 1 ether. So this is why it showed us the insufficient balance error. Okay, so this was all about the replay attack. I have shown you the practical. Now let's see the impact of this replay attack. Let me write here. Impact of replay attack. So first of all, the first attack is, first impact is duplicate transaction. Okay, which can cause confusion, then loss of funds, as you have seen in the practical I have shown here, and then the trust issues, and there are many more, but these are the main impact of replay attack. Okay, so that's it for this attack. So let's understand what is gas limit vulnerability on blockchain. Gas limit vulnerability. Okay, so I have already explained you what is gas on blockchain. It is a unit used to measure the computational effort required to execute transaction on the network. So every transaction requires certain amount of gas to be executed, and the sender of the transaction sets a gas limit, which is the maximum amount of gas they are willing to spend for the transaction. Okay, so what is gas limit? Maximum amount of gas user is willing to pay or spend. Okay, so what is gas limit vulnerability now? It occurs when a smart contract allows a user to perform an operation or transaction that requires a large amount of gas in a single transaction. Okay, so if the gas limit set by the sender is not sufficient to cover the gas cost, the transaction will fail due to running out of gas. So let's take an example. Suppose this is A, this is A, and this is B. A, B, and A is transferring some funds to B. Okay, but the contract has a loop which transfers a small amount of fund from A to B. It means suppose A is sending 100 ether. Okay, let's say A is sending 100 ether to B. So instead of sending 100 ether in a single transaction, the contract will run a loop, and in that loop the small amount of ether can be transferred. Okay, let's say 5 ether, 5 ether in one loop, another 5 ether in second loop, another 5 ether in third loop. Okay, so it will transfer this 100 ether in form of loops. Okay, so let's say since the gas consumed by the transaction is proportional to number of loop. Okay, so gas consumed is proportional to number of loop. It means that more the loop, the more the gas is consumed. So in case if A sends a very large amount of funds to B, the gas cost exit the gas limit, and as a result the transaction will fail. Okay, so what it is saying, uh, suppose the gas limit sent by the A is 600, sorry, it not it 600 unit, and the gas required to perform this transaction is 800. So what will happen, this this 600 is not enough to for this transaction, so ultimately that transaction will be failed. Okay, so this transaction will be failed, and despite the failed transaction, it will have to pay for the gas fees that occurred before the transaction ran out of gas. So it means that A will have to pay for this 600 unit of gas. Okay, it won't be like if the transaction is failed, the A won't be paying any money, any funds, any amount of money for this 600 unit of gas. It will have to pay for this 600 unit of gas even if the transaction is failed. Okay, so let's see the practical of this. So here, what this code is doing, it has a deposit function which is depositing money to the user account, and the withdraw function, this withdraw function is withdrawing ether from their balance in a small increment of 1 way. Okay, it means suppose the A is sending 1 ether to, in this, let's say this A na, it's sending 1 ether to let's say it is sending 1 ether to B. So instead of withdrawing 1 ether, instead of withdrawing this 1 ether directly from the contract, this B is withdrawing 1 ether in form of 1 Y. Okay, so if I give you an idea, so if we see the 1 ether, so see 1 ether is equal to this much amount of Y. Okay, so this means this this amount of loop will be executed for the transaction of 1 ether. So if we try to run this code, first of all let's compile. Oh, sorry, I forgot to connect it with the with my contract. So it says starting. Let's compile our contract. It's taking too much of time. Okay, now migrate. Okay, now let's open our Truffle console, and to deposit the funds to our contract, we need to first initialize an instance. We can use this command for this. Now let's transfer our ether. Await instance. Sorry, I just it's square bracket and then this braces. Value web3.utils two-way we are transferring one ether. Okay, one ether, and then this bracket cross. Okay, showing some syntax error. Let's see it. Okay, oh okay, sorry, no dot here. Wait instance. Okay, so here as you can see, the one ether is deposited to our account. Here it's showing 99 balance. That means our transaction is successful. Now let's try to withdraw the uh, 0.5 ether from our contract. Okay, so the command is await instance dot withdraw web3.utils dot two-way, then this 0.5 ether. So as you can see, this transaction is failed and the message it is showing out of gas. Okay, you can see now out of gas message is seeing here, and then the amount of money is deducted from this. The gas used is still deducted right now. So this attack is successfully executed in this case. So if let's see the impact of this vulnerability. So the impact can be failure of transaction, increased transaction fees, and it can cause network congestion also. So that's it for this lecture. So in this lecture, we are going to see what is blockchain reorganization attack. So in a blockchain network, miners compete with each other to solve a cryptographic puzzle, and whichever miner solves this cryptographic puzzle first, he or she can add the block in a blockchain. Okay, and why are they doing so? Of course, for the reward. So there's a concept in a blockchain that the longer chain is considered as a valid chain. Okay, so what happens is when multiple miners find a valid block at exactly the same time, it leads to a fork in a blockchain. Fork means the division in a division in a blockchain. Okay, so it's it's like this. Suppose this is the first block, then second block, and the miners submitted blocks at exactly the same time. So it created a fork, and it goes something like this. Okay, so suppose because of this 51% attack na, attacker gains a majority of the hash rate of a blockchain, means the computer majority of the computational power. So the attacker starts mining this chain faster. Okay, he starts mining this chain faster because they have majority of the computational power now. So what happens now is, this smaller chain na, all the blocks in this smaller chain will be discarded, and this longer chain will be considered as valid, and which will lead to this blockchain reorganization attack, because the blocks are reorganized na, because these are discarded, so this blockchain are now reorganized. So this is why this is how the blockchain reorganization attack is executed. So if you see this Twitter post now, as you can see this slot number 70818170807079, they all are forked. Okay, and what happens, this 818017 and all those forked chain na, they all are missed means they all are discarded, and this longer chain one longer chain one blocks are proposed, it means they are added to the blockchain. So in this case also, this blockchain reorganization attack is executed. You can read this whole post on Twitter. Okay, this lecture we are going to see supply chain attack on blockchain. Supply chain attack. So, the supply chain is a network that typically includes manufacturers, suppliers, logistics companies, and retailers that works together to deliver product to the consumer. To simplify it, let's assume you are trying to find a vulnerability in a blockchain network. Okay, so in this blockchain network, the vulnerability is not inside the code. Okay, it's not inside the code, but it is inside the tool or dependency we are using to build it. Okay, it's inside this tool. Okay, so attacker target these tools and dependency which is used to deploy or develop the blockchain infrastructure. It can be hardware or software, and the most common type of vulnerability is associated with Docker. So what Docker is, it is a platform used for building, shipping and running application within an container. Okay, what it is? It is used to uh, building, shipping and running application within containers. And what containers are? They are lightweight, standalone and executable package that contains all the necessary component or dependency to run an application. Okay, let's say this is a container and it will have all the dependency, all the necessary component, necessary code, and everything which is used to run an application. So how this Docker is exploiting this supply chain network? So an attacker can create a vulnerable Docker image. Docker image means assume it like a blueprint of a container. Okay, so attacker can create a vulnerable image by injecting the malicious code or backdoors into this image. Okay, malicious code and backdoors. And if this image is deployed on the blockchain, whole the blockchain network can be compromised, and if it happens, it can have major consequences like data breach or unauthorized access or tampering with data. Another vulnerability associated with Docker can be the Docker image may have some insecure configuration which can expose sensitive information such as API keys, credentials, or cryptographic keys. Okay. And another major supply chain attack can be dependency confusion. Dependency confusion. So, what it is? Package dependency refers to using third parties, libraries, or framework to provide a specific functionality to the application. So, what attacker do is he registered package name that match the internal dependency used by the organization but are not publicly available. Okay. So, what it means is suppose there's a package name called XYZ and it is not publicly available. It is just used in internal dependency. So what an attacker can do is he can go on the internet and upload this and create a new dependency by in create a new dependency and inject some malicious code in it and named it as XYZ. Okay. So what an attacker did is he creates a new dependency. Edit or inject some malicious code in it and named it as the XYZ. Okay. So so what will happen now is this when this attacker upload this dependency publicly, it automatically get replaced with this internal dependency and this one, and now this vulnerable dependency is installed in this application and thus making the network vulnerable. Okay, I'm explaining it again. What an attacker did is he creates a new dependency, injects a malicious payload, and named it exactly as this internal dependency, which in our case is XYZ. So he registered this XYZ on internet, and when he publicly registered this XYZ, this vulnerable XYZ is replaced with the with this internal dependency which was not vulnerable in the first case. Okay, and now it get installed in this application in our network and thus making it vulnerable. Okay,